During this discussion, we are going to be recording, so please do note that. And also, please do remain on mute during the initial presentations so that we get the best possible sound. We invite you to type any reflections or questions that you may have into the chat as the webinar progresses. We hope to call on members of the audience for contribution and discussion in that section of the event. So again, please do have your mute button on if you don't mind whilst speakers are talking, so that everyone can enjoy the best possible sound. Now, the context for this meeting, as I say, is part of the Coram Society programme of events that explores our history and learning from the past and its resonance to the experiences of children and young people in the care system through time, and lessons for the future of our care and education system for the future. So Coram today is clearly quite different from the time when we first were established by Thomas Coram as the Foundling Hospital. So it is worth us just reflecting for one moment on what that 286 years was like in the past, when Thomas Coram created his darling project, this charity, as the first and longest continuing charity for children. It was a time quite unrecognizable, really, to our experiences today, of little understanding of disease. There was no welfare system or infrastructure for society and for the vulnerable, apart from the workhouse. 7 in 10 children did not see their 5th birthday in the general population. And young women who found themselves pregnant outside of marriage were destitute. And the children were therefore in need of a lifetime of care. And it was to create that provision, the first groundbreaking provision in the UK of a residential care and education setting, that Thomas Coram worked so hard to create in the Foundling Hospital. We have recently digitized the hundreds of thousands of the records that we hold that are so precious to us and held in trust, and you can explore those at coramstory.org.uk. And young people today were involved in that process alongside 3,500 volunteers transcribing those records to make them searchable. The young people were responding to the records with their own stories and experiences to draw out those threads of learning. And this voice of young people is central to Coram's work today. And children, of course, in the past were to be seen and not heard. And those children that Coram supported weren't even seen before Thomas Coram. We are currently marking the 50th anniversary of Coram Voice as the birthplace of advocacy, formerly A Voice for the Child in Care. And next year we will mark the Silver Jubilee of the world's largest youth drama festival that quite literally makes sure that all the world is our stage for children from all backgrounds. So Coram today crosses all the dimensions of children's lives, but at the heart of what we still do is to ensure that children have a stable and secure opportunity to have a stable and secure home of whatever kind, access to education, and the support to gain the skills they need for life. You're looking here at the Royal Charter, which is, of course, still our governing document, and you're looking at the Foundling Hospital site, which allows you to see that in 1740, Coram was based, the Foundling Hospital was based in the fields outside London, some way away from the village of Highgate, and the heart of what is now Camden, but at the time was the outskirts of London. And the reason for the move of the school from London to Berkhamsted, so I sit, and I'm sitting at this moment, on the site of the chapel of the original Foundling Hospital building. But I think it's very important to think about how 2 centuries after Thomas Coram was campaigning, the organisation had hundreds of children in its care in central London. It was the period after the pandemic, the flu pandemic of 1918 to 20, that had left thousands of children orphaned. It was the year of the general strike in 1926, and the governors of the Foundling Hospital had the duty to support these children in their care in the midst of the London fogs, in an atmosphere that was not particularly conducive to their health, and also in buildings that were 200 years old. And that and financial difficulties led to them deciding that they should sell the estate in London and move the children to more healthy environment outside London. In fact, the creation of Coram's Fields by public subscription retained some of the original footprint, now dedicated to play, and Coram has continued its work with the 40 Brunswick Square building that was built as its headquarters and is now dedicated to the Foundling Museum and the display of our art collection. So in 1926, the children of the Foundling Hospital left this site, and they spent a few years in Redhill in Surrey whilst the building was created that is today Ashlyns School near Berkhamsted in Hertfordshire. We also note that that building that opened 90 years ago itself saw through its life as the Foundling Hospital School in 1954, following the development of the 1948 Children Act, which placed duties on local authorities for the first time, itself the result of a change in attitude in our society following the mass experiences of evacuation and the Second World War. So though the Berkhamsted School was sold and it continues in its mission for the education of children today, our work continues undimmed at the heart of the children's social care system. So it is my privilege now to turn to our presentations, and I will introduce speakers as appropriate. And first of all, to introduce John Caldecott, who is one of the former pupils of the Foundling Hospital. And I don't want to embarrass him, but I will embarrass him by pointing out that I have rarely seen an example of such dedicated service to the community than John has shown alongside his other colleagues in the Old Coram Association for so many years. And that John also was only the second former pupil to become a governor of the organisation. And John is now going to present to us his reflections on his life and that journey that he experienced from admission into the Foundling Hospital School in Berkhamsted. And we are also going to see a video clip which features one of our other great contributors, Lydia Carmichael, who we lost last year, and I know we may have some of Lydia's family with us, and the tour of Ashlyns School that John and Lydia conducted together. So I'm going to hand over, if I may.
As Carol has said, by the early 20th century, the Foundling Hospital in London no longer was in the countryside, but it was surrounded by residential squares, many of which had been created by the Foundling Hospital Estates Department, raising much needed funds towards the running of the hospital. And it was mainly for these reasons that the governors took the decision to sell the London site and move the children back into the countryside. We know the children left London in the summer of 1926 to premises in Red Hill, while a site for a new school was found. And after looking at several possible locations, 200 acres of land in Berkhamsted were chosen for the new school, the buildings of which would replicate many of the design features of the original London school, which we know today as Ashlyns, a co-educational secondary school. And as we know today, marks the 90th anniversary when in 1935, approximately 300 children arrived at the Berkhamsted railway station, from where they marched the 1.5 miles or so, led by their military-style band, to their new home at the top of Chesham Road. And it must have been quite a sight for the residents of this sleepy market town who had actually turned out to see the 300 children marching through their town. As many of you already know, the two-storied Berkhamsted buildings were magnificent. They were well built with the best materials in red brick and tastefully decorated with stone facings and judicious Baroque carvings. The layout of the school was very similar to the London School. The buildings included a fine concert hall with a fully equipped stage and a projection room to show the latest films. There was a gymnasium, a swimming pool, 2 large dining halls, one for the boys and one for the girls, kitchens and wards, as we called them, what we would now describe as dormitories, with classrooms, playrooms, and a separate band room for the boys' band. And as you came through the iron gates, the chapel was in front of you between the 2 wings of the buildings, incorporating many of the magnificent stained glass windows and the magnificent pipe organ given to the Foundling Hospital by the composer George Frederick Handel. The girls at the school were encouraged to join the choir and to take part in stage productions. The boys were given every opportunity to learn wind instruments and to join the band and also the choir. And music was taught to the children to a very high standard, and it played an important part in our lives. It was probably not fully appreciated at the time, but music was an antidote to the harshness of the life in the Foundling Hospital. As I said, the facilities and living accommodation were unparalleled for its time, and it gave us children a home which the average child could only dream of. It also gave the children standards of living out of the reach of the majority of the population, which the Foundling children, I think, would consider normal and may well have set their expectations for future life. And whilst the move to London, from London to Berkhamsted, had all these advantages, with the children once again enjoying the country air, there were also disadvantages, probably the most obvious being the isolation from the governing body, which remained in new offices in Brunswick Square. From the 1830s and through to the 1940s, the Foundling Hospital took into its care illegitimate children whose mothers were unable to care for them. And the daily routine for the children in the Berkhamsted School was very similar to the experience of children in the London School. And the procedure for admission of the children to the Foundling Hospital remained the same right up into the 1940s. Most of the children were taken into care at about the age of 3 months, and having been medically examined, they would be looked after by foster parents until they reached the age of 5, when they would then be returned to the hospital. And the return to the Foundling Hospital was very traumatic for both the children and the foster mothers. The children were taken with little or no explanation by their foster mothers to the school now in Berkhamsted, where they would be handed over to a nurse. Many of these foster parents were people who, although they were being paid to look after the children, they became very attached to them and found it difficult to return them to the Foundling Hospital. And there were many tearful scenes as the children were handed over to a nurse in the main concert hall. As in the London school, the boys and the girls were separated in Berkhamsted, kept in separate sides of the school, and for the first year, the infant boys and girls were housed in the south wing, which was the girls' side. And I think it's fair to say that most of the former pupils have very little memory of the time they spent on the infant side. But what they do remember is the day they were left at the school by their foster parents. I have memories of the infant's classroom on the girls' side. The tiled walls include some scenes of farmyard animals, and it's the only room, as far as I can see, in the school that suggests that this is a home for children. Throughout the history of the Foundling Hospital, the children always received practical care. We were housed, clothed, and fed a nutritious and healthy diet. However, what was missing was the psychological care and family love so necessary for the overall well-being of a child. After that first year, the infant children would in fact join the main school, the girls going to the girls' side and the boys to the boys. And that change was quite dramatic, being subject to a much rougher and tougher regime. The girls wore brown dresses and white aprons with caps, and the boys were dressed in the uniform still based on Hogarth's original design from the 1700s, which comprised of a brown serge trousers and a jacket with gold bright-coloured buttons and a red waistcoat also with coloured buttons. When I arrived in Berkhamsted in 1942, little had changed from the way the school was run in London. The children were very disciplined and regimented, and in many ways it was not like being brought up or being educated in a public school with traditions passed down throughout the centuries. I'm often reminded of life in the Foundling Hospital with Tom Brown's School Days, a book which many of you will remember. But the main difference between a public school and the Foundling Hospital was that the children in the Foundling Hospital knew that they were illegitimate and could not go home to parents for the school holidays, where perhaps they might have been able to share their worries and even receive some love and warmth, so part of the child's growing up. Even during the war, when families were having to make all sorts of sacrifices, the children in the Foundling Hospital continued to receive all the material benefits of the past. They continued to be housed, clothed, and fed. However, like many boys, I seem to remember being perpetually hungry. The food was nutritious, although I seem to remember the vegetables were usually boiled beyond recognition, like most schools. In 1939, 4 years after the children marched into their new home, the Second World War broke out, and life throughout the UK became very difficult, and not least for the management of the Foundling Hospital. Many of the staff we knew went off to war, and temporary staff were employed in their place. And in December 1943, the Foundling Hospital headmaster, who had been in post for decades, retired. About the same time, it's interesting to note a document from the Foundling Hospital to the Board of Education, which applied for an application for recognition of the school as efficient, stated that there were 430 children in the buildings and that they were receiving a wide range of education. Today, of course, Ashlyns School has a roll, I think, of over 1,500 children. The retirement of the headmaster in 1943 was the start of many changes in the management of children, and there was a succession of headmasters which had quite a different approach to the way the school should be run. The views of some of these headmasters were clearly at odds with the way the governors thought the school should run and how children should be managed. And consequently, they did not stay in post for very long, and we seem to have had a succession of headmasters during that time. About the Foundling Hospital governors took very much notice of the 1948 Children's Act, as Carol has mentioned, and I think it changed their focus of childcare from institutional care to family-based. And about 5 years after I arrived at the school, and with no explanation, the doors dividing in the dining hall, dividing the girls from the boys, was suddenly opened. It was about this time also that the school uniforms were discarded in favour of more traditional children's clothes, and the boys and the girls joined each other for lessons. Arrangements were made for us to go back to our foster family for the Easter and summer and Christmas holidays. And this was quite an experience for children who, not so long ago, were locked behind tall iron gates and kept away from the public. In January 1949, another head teacher was appointed who had previously taught at Bedales Co-Educational School in Hampshire. I'm sure arriving from Bedales to the Foundling Hospital must have been quite a culture shock, as although there had been changes, the underlying culture of harsh discipline and the attitude to these illegitimate children had not really changed. Nevertheless, over a relatively short space of time, what must have been difficult changes were made to bring the school into the 20th century. Even so, the teaching staff found the changes very difficult to accept, and I think the children found the process extremely confusing. At the start of this change, I remember that the teachers refused to sit in the dining room with the children to eat and used to go down the town to get their meals. And I think that lasted for about 3 weeks. As I say, I certainly couldn't believe what was happening and viewed the process with bemused astonishment. Having been constrained since the age of 5, we made the most of our newfound freedom, and we created havoc for the staff who regularly complained they simply could not control the children. Importantly, the Foundling Hospital ceased to take children into their residential care about this time and concentrated firstly on foster care, leading to adoption. And I think this brought into question the use of the Foundling Hospital buildings, and a decision was taken by the governors to sell the building to the local education authority. In 1950, local schools in Berkhamsted were closed, and as we know, the buildings of the old Foundling Hospital became Hertfordshire County Council Secondary School and named Ashlyns. The Foundling Hospital children now found themselves living in the buildings of Ashlyns School as boarders and mixing with children from the town attending school each day. They had been catapulted into a completely different world, mixing with children who, in the main, lived in a family environment and who went home to a mother and father, brothers and sisters. The relationships between the Foundling Hospital children and those from Berkhamsted, I think it's fair to say, may have been strained during the first few months of being brought together. But with the contribution of the Foundling Hospital tradition for music, drama and sport being encouraged, the two sets of children quickly gelled. Friendships were formed which, I'm happy to say, continue to this day. Thank you, Carol.
Thank you very much, John, for that fascinating memory. And I know, John, that you told me that when you left the Foundling Hospital, you went on to, I believe, to be in radiophonics, was it not called at the time? But also that music continued to play a big part in John's life through his own national service. So I hope we might hear a little more about that too. And we're going now to turn to, well, what is the contemporary experience of children in what is now Ashlyns School. And I'm absolutely delighted to introduce James Shapland, who's the head teacher, and Andrea West from Ashlyns School to offer their reflections and contribution on how the school's ethos today reflects or values the heritage and what this means to current children and staff. May I hand over to them? James, are you there?
So I had a problem unmuting. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Fabulous. I thought I clicked it, but it hadn't sort of taken. So we're actually speaking today from Berkhamsted in those amazing buildings. And I thought if my camera will reach, I can show you a quick view of the chapel, which is just outside my window. Can you see the chapel just there? There we are. So great. I'll just reposition you. It was an absolute sort of honour and a privilege to be asked to be involved in today's event, because for me personally, the heritage of the school has been a significant part of my headship. I've been fortunate enough to be the head here now for 17 years now. I'm in my 17th year as the head teacher. And one of the, I suppose, real memories that has always stayed with me is when I started was actually going on a tour, and I think that John was running, and at that moment I just started my headship, and going around the buildings with a foundling really did bring home to me that sense of heritage and that sense of legacy that we need to hold on to at Ashlyns. I mean, clearly the school buildings are remarkable, and there aren't many state comprehensives when you'll come down the drive and you'll see that amazing picture that awaits you. But as John also alluded to, the building was made incredibly well. We are very lucky, and Andrea, in her role, we're very lucky to be able to manage these buildings because they were built so well. It means that whilst it is a challenge, obviously, sort of maintaining a Grade 2 listed building, because of the good structure of this building, it's really helped us with that management. We hope today to sort of talk to you and to show you that the work of the Foundling Hospital Schools effectively continues, because it's interesting, in all schools, we still have children that have incredibly vulnerable lifehood experiences and place them in very, very challenging circumstances. And it's entirely incumbent upon us as schools to make sure that we do everything within our power to smooth their path through life and to give them every opportunity that we possibly can. One of the ways that we do that is we work intensively with them, but we also make sure that the wider school has a knowledge and an understanding of where this school has come from. Its history is really, really important to us. And when I stand on open evening and I talk to parents, I talk about the importance of our history and the legacy that remains with us. We work through our curriculum as well to make sure that students, when they join us, they know and they understand where this building came from. And we do that through various ways. So, for example, we have something called our extended learning days, where one of the year groups will have a whole range of activities that relate to the history of the school. We've been absolutely blessed in the past to have Lydia come and talk to students, and John's been involved in things with our students as well. Our librarian does an awful lot of work through the curriculum as well. So students, when they join us in year 7, they have a lesson every fortnight, which is based around sort of library and library skills. But the vehicle for that is the school's history and the Coram Foundation and so on. And that's a really lovely way of introducing them to our school and our school buildings. We've also wanted to sort of, I suppose, and make sure that everyone that was watching sort of really understands that schools have to continue with the work that they do. And it's really, we thought it'd be a nice reflection to sort of have a look at perhaps sort of what the experiences of students here today looks like, but also to get a sense of these amazing buildings and how they may have evolved over time as well. Because we are blessed to have these buildings, but we still have to be a 21st century school. And I'm sure that lots of people that have been able to visit will be able to see how the buildings have changed and evolved over time. And that's a big part of Andrea's work, and perhaps she'll be able to tell you a little bit about that after we've watched a short video clip. So I think if we can go to the video clip, that would be wonderful. Thank you so much. That's great.
Hello, my name is Marianne and I'm in Year 7. My favourite subject is PE and I love football.
Hello, my name is Cora. I love reading and my favourite subject is English.
Hi, I'm Josh. I really like science.
Hi, I'm Fatima. My favourite subject is English.
Hello, I'm Ollie and I love maths.
I chose to come to Ashlyns because, apart from its grandeur, it has an astounding history of helping young people to thrive for generations. I'm really proud to be part of the community.
I chose to come to Ashlyns because my big sister Amy already goes to this school, so me and my twin decided to figure out what it would be like to come to this amazing school.
At Ashlyns, there's the amazing Astro, the dojo, the sports hall, the dance studio and all the amazing field areas.
I was worried at first about getting lost and not finding my way around the school, but then I came to summer school and that really helped me make new friends and I became familiar with the school and the teachers.
I've settled in really well. I've made loads of new friends and all the teachers are really nice and support you. If you ever need help in the morning, then your form tutors can tell you and help you with anything. I've got lost quite a few times, but there's always staff and older students around the school to help you.
My favourite experience has definitely been meeting loads of new people. My favourite subject is science. I'm really fond of the new in-depth learning and using all the new cool equipment.
I've really enjoyed my English lesson so far. I like the way my English teacher explains things because it helps me with my work. Also, I enjoy using my Chromebook in the lessons since it's more efficient and I feel like I get more work done.
At Ashlyns, I've joined badminton, netball and trampolining, but there are so many more extracurricular clubs that you probably couldn't count them all.
I've joined football club and I'm sure I will join many more. I really like the welcoming feel, even if you have little to no experience at it.
So far, I've joined football, trampolining and netball club. It's a good way to play sports using all the school's facilities after school with your new friends that you make.
Some Year 6s may be afraid that Chromebooks are all difficult and maybe a little bit scary, but they're really not, and it's really fun to go into Google Classroom and see what teachers have assigned you. You can also go into Insight and see all your merits and your timetables for your next lessons.
There are so many things I'm looking forward to during my time at Ashlyns, but one thing I'm most looking forward to is the trips, such as the ski trip and the Year 7 trip to the Peak District, and there are so many more.
So hopefully you really enjoyed the video there showing Ashlyns School as it is now, but how similar it is still to how it was when it was built. That photo you just saw was actually taken in 1964 and before many of the facilities that we have now that ensure that the children, John actually interestingly earlier said that the children got used to a standard of living and a lifestyle that they probably wouldn't have had outside the hospital as it was then. And I feel as if that's true for our children now. They're educated in such beautiful surroundings. We're still in 42 acres. We've still got the heritage and the beautiful buildings, but we also have the modern facilities, especially the sports facilities. The old boiler house has been converted into drama classrooms, and we're literally using absolutely every single space of the school, and the children get to use everything. There is nothing that is wrapped up in mothballs here. The children have assemblies every day in the chapel. All the classrooms are used, the dining rooms and the main school hall. The concert hall, as is referred to, is used every single day as well. So we really hope that all the children at Ashlyns, whichever walk of life they come from, get to use modern, state-of-the-art facilities, but housed in these beautiful buildings.
Okay, I think back to you then, Carol.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm just in awe of the way in which this site was created and is eternally dedicated to the education and well-being of children and young people. And it's so fascinating to see the environment still singing out in terms of the opportunities that it helps to create for children from all backgrounds. So the sport, there's always been the trips and the periods under canvas for the children of the Foundling Hospital, the experience of film, the music and the music tradition, but also at the heart, still continuing, is the enrichment of children's lives through creative activities. And I know that there is a very lovely photograph, which we're probably not going to see, of John on stage with the other former pupil to become a governor of Coram called Ruth Miller as Oberon and Titania. And the exposure of children, the opportunities for children to find their voice and their talents, and for all the world to be their stage. I'm just going to hand over now for a few moments to Mike Tucker from Coram Shakespeare Schools Foundation, which now runs the largest youth drama festival in the world. Over to you, Mike.
Thank you, Carol, and good to see everyone. I hope you can hear me okay. I am Mike Tucker, as Carol said, the head of Coram Shakespeare Schools Foundation. We are one of the constituent charities in the Coram Group, and we are, as Carol said, a charity that harnesses the power of Shakespeare to transform young people's lives, to understand what that means for their confidence, for their development of skills, and ultimately for their well-being. So we're just going to start, I hope, with a short video to talk a little bit about our work, our anniversary this year, and our strategy.
The ability to understand what other people might be feeling and thinking, it expands our sense of each other. School teaches you many things, but a good schooling also teaches you about yourself and about other people. And I think that's where the expressive arts come in. They deal in emotions, talking about them in a safe space. It teaches us to be more tolerant, more forgiving, and those are all things worth knowing.
For 25 years, the Shakespeare Schools Festival has given young people something powerful. The chance to stand on a professional stage, perform centuries-old plays and find themselves within them. From a single theatre in West Wales to a nationwide movement, we've worked with over 350,000 young people, 10,000 teachers and 150 partner theatres, together building confidence, unlocking skills and creativity, and helping young people feel they belong. This is more than a festival. It's a stage for every child.
I've been teaching for 33 years now, and I have seen the power that drama can have on a young person's life. Your ability to communicate well and clearly with other people is a universal skill, and drama is one of the key subjects that will develop that.
It develops a whole range of soft skills that are really necessary for success in whatever career path they go into. So confidence, collaboration, teamwork, real creative problem solving, and those problem solving skills that young people need to be able to adapt to the world that they're living in today, that's where you find them. You find them in your arts curriculum.
Fundamentally, it should be a right, an entitlement for every student in the land to be able to experience art, music, dance and drama. The skills that students learn are absolutely essential for becoming well-rounded human beings.
It provides you with a well-rounded education. And my belief as a head teacher is that every school needs to commit to offering all of the arts to young people right up to the end of Key Stage 3.
Coram Shakespeare Schools Foundation's 2030 strategy, All the World's Our Stage, represents our core belief that every young person, wherever they come from, should have the chance to stand in the spotlight. Over the next 25 months, we'll work with 25,000 children. Together, we'll unlock confidence, opportunity and creativity and build skills for the future. Because the next 25 years starts now, and this stage belongs to all of us.
Thank you, and I hope I've slightly improved the audio quality. I think you were picking up the noise of the cafe behind me before the video, but I'll just say that it's been so heartwarming to hear how the expressive arts and creativity still plays such an important role at Ashlyns, and through our work, through our partnerships with schools, and increasingly through our work across the group with young people facing structural disadvantage, we know how important these opportunities are to foster skills, but also to really foster a sense of belonging. And I think that is something that we will take with us and take with the learnings from today into the next 5 years of our work. It is a key pillar of our 2030 strategy that we will grow those opportunities for young people facing structural disadvantage, following pilots that we've run with Leicester City Virtual School and with the Coram adoption entities, to make sure that there is no access barrier for young people to experience firsthand what it feels like to stand on that stage, take the spotlight and have their chance to shine. So my closing remarks are to say, please do check out our strategy. You can find it through the Coram website and on shakespeareschools.org. And to support us for the next step in our journey, giving every young person the chance to shine. Thank you. Back to you, Carol.
Thank you very much, Mike. And one of the things I just say, increasingly within our work and the experiences of this digital first generation, there has never been a more important task than for young people to have a place to belong and a sense of identity, and to have the skills they need to form the lasting relationships that were, in fact, despite all the downsides, a key feature that John and Lydia and our former pupils have enjoyed through their lives. So I'm just going to, with those few remarks and our thanks to Ashlyns School for their continuing service to the children today in Berkhamsted, and to Mike and the team in their continuing service to children, no matter where they are, to open up for discussion. And I know that we have a first comment and a hand that has been raised by Val Malloy. And Val, I'll just turn to you and ask you to introduce yourself and to ask your question or to reflect with us.
Hello, Carol. Hello, everyone. I didn't actually put my hand up unless it was by mistake. But I'm a formal social worker with the former pupils at Coram. It's good to see John and to hear the history again. It was very well represented. The transition during the war years and after the war years was enormous, and it led to some difficult times, actually, finding families for all those children who'd previously been in institutional care, but it was something that had to happen. And, it was important for their psychological well-being. Sadly, in the days that John and Lydia came into the school, we didn't understand that children have an inner world, that they experience loss and sadness, that they need attachment and love and affection. We didn't know that in the way that we do today, and that's what had to enter the way in which children were looked after by Coram, and obviously is key in the work today as well. So that's really my comment, Carol. Thank you.
Thank you. I just observe also that you will have heard recent government announcements, and one of our concerns of the time is that actually there is an insufficiency in the available options for children who do need alternative care today. And in fact, there has been massive learning around the importance of family life and long connections and the importance of love and attachment, which is very easy for us to forget was not known. It is a very recent psychological learning, but also that so many of the issues faced by children feel eternal. And at the moment, we do have a lack of options, and government policy is focused on not only the development of further kinship and foster care opportunities, but also actually investment in specialist residential provision. So I don't know if anyone would like to comment on that learning. I can see Johnny Hoyle here, Johnny, I don't want to put you on the spot, but what do you reflect, given your important role in actually making plans for children today who might be in similar circumstances to John was in the past?
Yeah, well, thank you, and thanks for this hour. I've thoroughly loved learning a bit more. I think one of the things that really stood out for me, and we know that the arts are really important for all children to learn to express themselves, to build skills and confidence, etc. But I think what really stood out for me, both from seeing the site at Ashlyns and from seeing the Coram campus, is how do you start to measure those other bits of having that space, playing together on a field, football, netball? How do we measure the connections and the skills, etc., that those things bring? And sometimes we lose sight of that because we're so busy trying to count the things that we can count. We all know that those things are beneficial, and I'm not sure we always give them the kind of regard that maybe we need to.
Thank you. I don't know, John, James and Andrea, how do you balance that judgment between the must-dos and the should-dos?
It is extremely challenging, and it's really interesting because there's an additional layer to the challenge here at Ashlyns in a way, because you'll know, Carol, that schools are funded per pupil. It's called ORPU funding, and we as a school get exactly the same amount of funding per pupil as a school down the road and a school further down the road and so on. But at the same time, we have to look after these amazing historic buildings. And so we don't get any additional funding to maintain the school in that sense. But also that there's, again, so one of my challenges as a head teacher is maintaining this at the same time as ensuring that children don't get a detrimental sort of offer, and at the same time recognizing that within that group of all the children, there are some of the most vulnerable children in society still in our school. We have between 20 and 30 children typically who are either looked after or previously looked after, still at the school at the moment. We have huge challenges around sometimes where that overlaps with special educational needs provision. For example, I was at a meeting this morning where I was told there's about 140 children in the borough of Coram awaiting specialist provision, but are being held notionally in maintained sector schools, and that number is going up by 10 students every fortnight that are deemed to require specialist provision. And some of that can be for things to do with related to trauma-based issues and so on, and the impact that that's had on their lives. So those challenges are extraordinarily tough in schools. I suppose the way that we, like lots of social sector sort of organisations, try to address that is through lobbying and continually sort of making our voices heard, but at the same time through the reliance on staff going the extra mile. And again, in some ways, that sort of harks back to the legacy of Coram, really, where good people do good things because they believe in what they do and they care fundamentally about young people getting the very best start in life, and trying to compensate for when some people haven't had that experience. And that's about the goodness of people, and it's heartwarming, but it's frustrating in equal measure.
Thank you, James. Personally, I believe very strongly that all of us can effect change through small acts of kindness. And that's something we try to infuse in our PSHE work with Coram Life Education. But also the point that you raise around the challenges that we face in as a society that is striving to care, it does feel to me as if there is a big renegotiation of the role of school and care now, as there were at that critical juncture 90 years ago with the formation of the welfare state. And we could have an entire session to talk about that. But if so many children are experiencing so many needs, so many additional needs, then it's a new normal. And we have to think about school and the balance of the curriculum in a different way. So we, of course, have contributed to the curriculum review. We, in fact, are a core participant in the COVID inquiry, talking about the lessons and learning from that experience for children. and will be certainly working, and obviously should take in your evidence, James, to inform the forthcoming Special Educational Needs and Disabilities Review. I wanted to pick up on your point, James. We have a question, an imaginative name of EU 2024 phone, so I'm not quite sure who I'm asking, so please do tell us your name when you come on. But a particular question about that challenge you face and the struggle that there has been in maintaining and restoring the crypt to the chapel. Whether it has been restored, what is happening to the crypt monuments. Do come on if you would like to, the person who's asked this question, but we'll ask James to...
James. For this one.
So yes, so obviously we do have challenges, and we have quite limited funds for making sure that the buildings are maintained, but we are able to tap into funds. We've just had the flat roofs replaced and many of the skylights replaced to, for sustainability and to sort of modernise the buildings as much as we can. Now the crypt is a fabulous place, and we do look after it. It does periodically get flooded still. It's to do with the water table. It's actually because it's so low at certain times of the year. There will be, I don't know, it's probably about 6 inches of water in there, but that's not all year round. So it is subject to flooding, but there's a large part of the year that we can get into there, and it is an amazing space, especially in the evening. The evening sun comes at the front of the buildings. A lot of the long corridors, the light comes into the John, I'm sure you'll remember what that was like. And so the crypt is beautiful in the evenings with the sun streaming through, and we can go in there. And the monuments are all still there, and they're well sort of monitored and looked after. But if we had the funds to really restore it, we would definitely do that because it's absolutely beautiful. So hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you. I know it's Eleanor Updale has managed to tell us that she's behind the EU fund. I did wonder whether you were EU, but also is travelling, so is unable to come on. But I also know that for Eleanor, the life of her father, I believe, in the Foundling Hospital has been, those memories have been passed down through the family. So lovely to see you there, Ellie, and we'll be in touch. We also have an observation from Leanne. I don't know, Leanne, if you would like to come on screen, please do if you would like to, and feel perfectly comfortable not to if you prefer not. But for all the children in the Foundling Hospital, there was, of course, initially a foster family, and then, as it were, a wider community of not siblings but peers with whom children were living throughout their lives. But there was, of course, also a birth family, a birth mother who had, because of circumstances, been unable to care. And Leanne, do you want to comment, or are you okay if I just read out your note? I will press on to do that. In the chat, Leanne has commented that she was a birth mother. She is a birth mother and was schooled in a church-based primary school and then a local comprehensive secondary. Hello, Leanne. How lovely to see you. Would you like to ask your question directly? Leanne is, I think, struggling there with the technology, but is pointing out that her circumstances led to her children receiving permanency placements outside the family, and is now depending upon what is known as letterbox contact. And in answer to Leanne's question about how these things are facilitated for children in local authority care or on an adoption order today, well, Coram moved from the journey of providing alternative care directly as the Foundling Hospital, progressively moved through this period into trying to support children in their families and in their communities and providing foster care, and then becoming an adoption agency in 1972. It is a distinctive feature that within the whole journey of the Foundling Hospital, children, the possibility of reunification remained, so that children were fostered, and it was only in the period after the advent of the 1948 Act, indeed the 1972 Adoption Act, that Coram registered as an adoption agency. And today we do support children where the courts have decided that that is the right plan for them, and work extensively in an area called concurrent planning to make early plans for children that facilitate an understanding between the birth mother, parent, and the potential adopters in that planning process, and support letterbox contact. We've also very recently been pioneering work known as sibling time, because of the very substantial importance for children in maintaining connections with siblings. And that is no matter the placement type. So, Leanne, it's quite a large area to open up, but most certainly the importance of understanding. One of the things that John said was there was little explanation about what was happening. So initially at 5, perhaps that would have been a rather difficult thing to be explained, but also the changes within the school. And we still find that today in our bright spot surveys of children in care, that 1/3 of children in these extensive surveys say they do not know why they are in care. So that understanding and that ability to understand one's own story, to nurture connections that matter, to recognize the journey that you are on with support is a key ingredient in the continuing work of Coram and indeed our local authority colleagues that provide that care today. And I know that for schools, it's a really important ingredient in their work. And I don't know, James, as kind of closing remarks from you, if you might just talk a little more about how you are seeking to work within the school to build that culture of kindness and of friendship and understanding to support children who are facing the same challenges that John described.
But thank you, and it's really, I suppose, a privilege to be able to have the opportunity to say this, really, because of course school should be about providing children opportunities through exam results and what they might go on to in that sense. But the school absolutely has to be about much more than that. And for us as a school, that's why I consider us to be a values-driven school. It's the kind of people that walk out of our gates after 13 years of education that matter most to me. The kind of people they are because of the values they hold and that they'll take with them throughout their lives. And we talk significantly about the kind of characteristics and the traits that we want people to have. And much of that sits around that theme of kindness and inclusivity, independence. And these are the kinds of things that help to shape young people's lives in the most positive and most productive way possible. And a big part of that is, I suppose, wanting to develop children's self-reliance and independence to the point, and we make this to them time and time again, to the point whereby you are in a position that you can help others who aren't able to do that for themselves or to advocate in that way. And that's an absolutely central plank of everything that we wish to achieve here at Ashlyns to this very day.
Thank you very much indeed, James. And this is the common mission and the common values that go through time and place the legacy of the Foundling Hospital into the future. So as we close, I just mark that we mark this moment of 90 years and the importance of what has been achieved and the progress and change that has been effected. And we look for further progress and change in the next 90 years of both Coram as the Foundling Hospital and Ashlyns School for its continued service to children in Berkhamsted. With those closing remarks, I would like to thank our speakers for taking part, to thank Millie for making the arrangements for Coram Society today. Please do keep an eye on the activities that we have, the uniting past and present in our eternal mission. And please do explore further our history through coramstory.org.uk. Thank you all so much for joining, and may you have a very good day.